The Air Force and the Pentagon's Cost Assessment and Program Evaluation Office will review the mix of tactical aircraft the Air Force plans to use in the future. Breaking Defense reports Air Force Chief of Staff General C.Q. Brown says the study will focus on facts and not just opinions. General Hawk Carlisle, U.S. Air Force retired, is president and CEO of the National Defense Industrial Association. Hawk, it's good to see you, and I call on you today not as the head of NDIA, but as someone who knows well and loves the Air Force. What would you like to see come out of this review of the force regarding the mix of aircraft that it has?
Well, thanks, Francis. It's great to be here. It's great to see you as well. And I think this is incredibly important. You know, if you look at what the Air Force has gone through over the last several decades, forward-based in Europe and the Pacific, forward deployments to the Europe and Pacific, multiple deployments to the Middle East, many to the Africa, homeland security, the air sovereignty missions, as well as training. It's just the demand signal on the United States Air Force fighter aircraft is incredible. And we have to figure out a way to make it sustainable. So I think what I'm looking for is how many different fleets can we support in the Air Force, and then how many of each one of those fleets do we need? If you think about it right now, we have 2 and we're going to 3 significantly different F-15 models. We have the F-16, we have the A-10, we have the F-35, we have the F-22, and each one of those needs a training pipeline, a part supply pipeline, and we just got to figure out what's sustainable in the long run.
What do you do? How do you define the term sustainable, and how would you like to see the force define sustainable? Given the changes in the nature of the landscape that you just laid out, is that definition the same as it was 2 years ago or 5 years ago?
Well, yeah, I think it is. I think we have to get a realistic demand signal of what it's going to be like. And, you know, again, that changes with the national defense strategy over time. But, you know, we're talking great power competition, so sustainable quality force that can deal with the great power competition of China and Russia, and to a lesser extent, Iran and North Korea. And then whatever else is going to be required of the Air Force. It's going to include air sovereignty mission, and then, you know, we'll see what the demand signal is for the Middle East. But, you know, it's something that we can keep trained, ready airmen and aircraft that are available for the missions that the nation asks them to do. And, you know, that's really dependent upon how it looks with respect to the national defense strategy.
Is this then maybe a challenging environment without a national defense strategy since 2018? Is this a challenging environment to undertake this, or is this the right time to undertake this, anticipating a new national defense strategy in the next year or so?
Well, I think it's the right time to take it on, because I think to some extent, you know, it's going to, the ability to create a sustainable path forward is going to influence what we do and the national defense strategy going forward. We know that there's still great power competition. We know what our potential adversaries in China and Russia are trying to do, and that has to be the first priority. So I think that this is the right time to do it, in my opinion.
General Brown said that this study will include a clean sheet design for a new 4th-and-a-half or 5th Gen minus replacement for the F-16, which you mentioned a moment ago. What does that aircraft, what would you like to see that aircraft encompass? What are the capabilities that it maybe should add over what the F-16 can do today? And where does that fit into the broader mosaic of the Air Force's fleet?
Well, I think the first thing I'd say, I think General Brown's right. I think he's spot on. But to do this, it would require retiring some other fleets. And that's one thing that's, as we all know, is kind of difficult to do these days. But you can't add another aircraft without starting to reduce the number of fleets of training and supply, part supply pipeline that you need. So if you do this and it's a clean sheet new airplane, you're going to have to retire fleets of airplanes, in my opinion. And the biggest factor, I think, and I think what General Brown's getting after, is you really need an airplane that has a plug-and-play open systems architecture where you can change sensor capability, you can change communications capability, you can put things in and you can continually upgrade it, or you keep the airframe, the outer mold line, but you have the ability to continually upgrade it with sensors and comm suites and command and control capability. So it really has to be a very adaptable airplane that can be serially improved over time.
And I imagine what's exciting for a pilot like yourself, Hawk, is that the Air Force now has demonstrated that it can make those changes even in mid-flight. And so this is not pie in the sky as it might have been just a few years ago. This is what you're suggesting there is eminently doable in the next generation aircraft of all types, not just what replaces the F-16.
Yes, that's exactly right, Francis. It's doable. It's not, I mean, it's just a question of, you know, having the right airframe and doing the systems engineering and the test and development and working with industry for the open systems architecture so that you can plug and play different capabilities in the airplane as you continue to improve it, and it is definitely doable.
General Brown also touched on the idea of the size and structure of the force and suggested that maybe the 386 squadron number is open for conversation as well. We're seeing the same thing in the Navy, the size and structure of the fleet and the composition of it underneath the top line number. Is there a number that makes sense to you at this point, or is this part of the conversation that you believe the force needs to have, Hawk?
I think it's a part of the conversation the force needs to have. 386, I mean, I think that was a great mark on the wall, and I think that was a great study done. But I think we need to look at the organization of the Air Force. I think we need to look at the demand signal based on the National Defense Strategy. We need to look at the Joint Force and what the Joint Force needs from its Air Force. So I think 386 was a great start, but I think that dialogue and the real examination of what the Air Force looks like in the future, given the great power competition we're in, I think that's a dialogue that includes how many squadrons the Air Force is actually going to be.
General, thanks very much for your insight. It's great to have you back on the program.
Thanks, friends. Great talking to you, my friend.